with a prayer by Srimati Sadhana.
Dakshinamurti Sarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Shuklam Vishnum Sheshivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopasantaye Angikam Bhuvananyasya Vachikam Sarvavangmayam Aharyam Tantasaradi Tam Namasatikam Shivam Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We now have the Muttakatrayam by Shri Kumarji.
Ekam aksharam hridhi nirantaram bhasate swayam likyate katham hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham aham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati hrudi vishamanasa svam chinvata majjata pavana chalana rudha atmanishto bhavatvam deham mranmayavat jadatmakam aham buddhirna tasyastyatu naham tattakabhavashuddhi samai siddhatma sadbhavah Om Bhavayuta Kuto Varadhiya Drishtatmanishtatmana Soham Spukitaya Arunachala Shivaha Guru Vibhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Guru Vibhati Swayam. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We now have the chanting of Upadesha Saram by Uma Shripati and Ashwini Balaji.
नमो रमण। वायुरोधना लीयते मन जालपक्षिवद्रोधसाधनम् चित्तवायवाश्चित्क्रियायुताः शाखयोर्द्वयी शक्तिमूलका लयविनाशने उभयरोधने लयगतं पुनर्भवति नोऽमृतम् प्राणबन्धना लीनमानसम् एकचिन्तना नाशमेत्यद नष्टमानसो उत्कृष्टयोगिना कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यत दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मना चित्वदर्शनं तत्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्गार्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मन अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत ऐपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभाज्यहमहं तया स्फुरति हृत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत्। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. We now have the Ramananjali music by Radha and Pratibha.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. The composer for this song is Swami Shuddhananda Bharati, and the music is set by L. Krishnan. இதய குகையே இருப்பிடமாக உதய கதிர் போலுலகெல்லாம் ஒளிரும் அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா இதய குகையே இருப்பிடமாக உதய கதிர் போலுலகெல்லாம் ஒளிரும் அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா 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 பேச்சிலும் ரமணன் மூச்சிலும் ரமணன் நினைப்பதும் ரமணம் நெஞ்சினில் ரமணன் பேச்சிலும் ரமணன் மூச்சிலும் ரமணன் நினைப்பதும் ரமணன் நெஞ்சினில் ரமணன் மனத்திலே ரமணன் அனைத்திலும் ரமணன் மனத்திலே ரமணன் அனைத்திலும் ரமணன் அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா 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 கற்பது ரமணன் நிற்பது ரமணன் இருப்பது ரமணன் புஜிப்பது ரமணன் கற்பது ரமணன் நிற்பது ரமணன் இருப்பது ரமணன் புஜிப்பது ரமணன் உடுப்பது ரமணன் நடப்பது ரமணன் படுப்பது ரமணன் விழிப்பது ரமணன் உடுப்பது ரமணன் நடப்பது ரமணன் படுப்பது ரமணன் விழிப்பது ரமணன் அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா 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 மந்திரம் அணிமரும் தெந்திரம் அவனே சிந்தையும் அவனே செய்கையும் அவனே மந்திரம் அணிமரும் தெந்திரம் அவனே சிந்தையும் அவனே செய்கையும் அவனே அவன் அவனது நீ நான் என உலவும் அவனியும் அவனே ஆருயிர் சிவனே அவன் அவனது நீ நான் என உலவும் அவனியும் அவனே ஆருயிர் சிவனே அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா இதய குகையே இருப்பிடமாக இதய கதிர் போலுலகென மொழிரும் அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா அறிவே அருளே அன்பே ரமணா 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 நமோ
Namo Ramana to all. Today I'll be presenting a song in Telugu. The lyrics is by Y.V. Venkateshwara Rao and the music is by Dr. S. Rajeshwara Rao. రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము సరళము అనుసరణీయము సరళము అనుసరణీయము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము సరళము అనుసరణీయము సరళము అనుసరణీయము రమణుడు చెప్పిన వేదము రమణుడు చెప్పిన వేదము పుణ్యప్రదము పఠనీయము పుణ్యప్రదము పఠనీయము రమణుడు చెప్పిన వేదము రమణుడు చెప్పిన వేదము పుణ్యప్రదము పఠనీయము పుణ్యప్రదము పఠనీయము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము సరళము అనుసరణీయము సరళము అనుసరణీయము స్వార్థ జీవులకు అర్థము కానిది స్వార్థ జీవులకు అర్థము కానిది సదాచారులకు సుగ్రాహ్యం ఇది సదాచారులకు సుగ్రాహ్యం ఇది స్వార్థ జీవులకు అర్థము కానిది స్వార్థ జీవులకు అర్థము కానిది సదాచారులకు సుగ్రాహ్యం ఇది సదాచారులకు సుగ్రాహ్యం ఇది మంగళప్రదమిది మహిత శక్తి ఇది మంగళప్రదమిది మహిత శక్తి ఇది అరుణాచల కరుణా కటాక్షమిది అరుణాచల కరుణా కటాక్షమిది మంగళప్రదమిది మహిత శక్తి ఇది మంగళప్రదమిది మహిత శక్తి ఇది అరుణాచల కరుణా కటాక్షమిది అరుణాచల కరుణా కటాక్షమిది రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము సరళము అనుసరణీయము సరళము అనుసరణీయము రమణుడు చెప్పిన వేదము రమణుడు చెప్పిన వేదము పుణ్యప్రదము పఠనీయము పుణ్యప్రదము పఠనీయము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము రమణుడు చూపిన మార్గము సరళము అనుసరణీయము సరళము అనుసరణీయము రమణ మార్గము సరళ మార్గము రమణ మార్గము సరళ మార్గము రమణ మార్గము అనుసరణీయము రమణ మార్గము అనుసరణీ రమణ మార్గము మంగళ రమణ మార్గము మైత శక్తియు రమణ మార్గము మైత శక్తియు రమణ మార్గము మంగళప్రదము రమణ మార్గము మంగళప్రదము రమణ 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 Ramana 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 Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
We continue the Ramananjali offering with a song by Revati Shankar.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the 9th verse of Darshanam. Dvandvani sarvanyakhilastriputyah kinchit samashritya vibhanti vastu tanmargane syat kalitam samattam na pashyatam satchalanam kadapi. When the individual for whom duality and trinity exist is traced, they loosen and fall. Then all mental movements ceases forever. Then all mental movements ceases forever. Until I pay attention to me, I will never realize that there are many other than me. That is, two opposites or three triputis and so on. So when I pay attention to the one who sees, I realize that I am beyond all these. So the movement also stops as I hold on to what is natural to me, the self. It is not one or not one also. It is beyond and not beyond also. Because if I say it is not, then also it is. So I present to you a song by Muruganar Swami, Kannada translation by Dr. N.S. Lakshminarayana Bhatta, music by H.K. Narayana. Jaya Giri Ennire, Jaya Guru Ennire, Jnanadata Ramanage Jaya Ennire, Jaya Giri Ennire, Jaya Guru Ennire, Jnanadata Ramanage Jaya Ennire, Janana Marana Bhaya ರೋಗಗಳೆಲ್ಲವ ಹರಿಸುವ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಹರಿಸುವ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಜಯಗಿರಿ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ, ಜಯ ಗುರು ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಜ್ಞಾನದಾತ ರಮಣಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ವಿಮಲ ಜ್ಞಾನವೇ ಮೈಯಾದವನಿಗೆ ಹೃದಯವ ದೋಚಿದ ಸುಧಾ ಸ್ವರೂಪಿಗೆ ಹಿಂದೆ ಕಂಡಿರದ ಸುಂದರ ಪ್ರಭುವಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಕಾಶ ರೂಪದ ಅಮೂಲ್ಯ ಪ್ರೀತಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಕಾಶ ರೂಪದ ಅಮೂಲ್ಯ ಪ್ರೀತಿಗೆ ಜಯಗಿರಿ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ, ಜಯ ಗುರು ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜ್ಞಾನದಾತ ರಮಣಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜಯ ತಂದೆಗೆ ಜಯ ತಾಯಿಗೆ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜ್ಞಾನರೂಪಿ ಪ್ರಭುವಿಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜಯ ತಂದೆಗೆ ಜಯ ತಾಯಿಗೆ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜ್ಞಾನರೂಪಿ ಪ್ರಭುವಿಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಉಸಿರಿಗೆ ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಆಚೆಗೆ ನಿರ್ಮಲ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಗೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ನಿರ್ಮಲ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಗೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜಯಗಿರಿ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ, ಜಯ ಗುರು ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಜ್ಞಾನದಾತ ರಮಣಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರೆ. ಪಾದಕ್ಕೆ ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲವ ಮೀರಿದ ಅನಂತ ಸತ್ವಕ್ಕೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಪಾದಕ್ಕೆ ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲವ ಮೀರಿದ ಅನಂತ ಸತ್ವಕ್ಕೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಭುವಿಗೂ ದಿವಕ್ಕೂ ಎರಡನು ಮೀರಿದ ಶ್ರೀ ಗುರುದೇವಗೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಶ್ರೀ ಗುರುದೇವಗೆ ಜಯ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಜಯ ಗಿರಿ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ, ಜಯ ಗುರು ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಜ್ಞಾನದಾತ ರಮಣಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಜ್ಞಾನದಾತ ರಮಣಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ಜ್ಞಾನದಾತ ರಮಣಗೆ ಜಯ ಎನ್ನಿರಿ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Namo Ramana. We now have the reading and the sharing by Shri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. For our reading today, we continue to read from first meetings with Ramana Maharishi, first person accounts, edited and compiled by our founder president, Shri A.R. Natarajanji. Today we are reading the account of Swami Madhava Tirtha. So, and since we have some time, I am going to read from Ramana Periya Puranam also after this reading. A little bit of the account from B. Ganesh Nanna on Madhava Tirtha also. So, this account is called Brilliance of the Sun. Brilliance of the Sun by Swami Madhava Tirtha. Ganesh Nanna says that he was called as Motilal. Madhava Tirtha was called as Motilal in his Purvashrama. In the year 1944, Shri Manu Subedar invited me to accompany him to Shri Ramanashrama. We met in Bombay, but circumstances did not permit him to keep the program, and therefore I decided to proceed by myself to the abode of the sage of Arunachala, since I had already read and heard much about him. I reached the ashram on the 14th of August. My first darshan of Shri Maharishi, which happened to be in the dining hall, was so entirely free from sanctimonious conventions that I was at once put at ease and in perfect tune with the sage's surroundings. The sage's benign look of welcome made me feel at home and conveyed a sense of ineffable happiness, which remained with me throughout my stay at Shri Ramanashrama, which was for 14 days at that time. It has always been my habit to note down my impressions during such visits to important places and make a record of them for the benefit of other aspirants. The notes I took at Shri Ramanashramam formed the basis of my Gujarati book on Shri Ramana Maharishi. I should like to refer to a somewhat mystical experience I had during my visit. It is rather difficult to describe such an experience, but I may try to convey some idea to the reader by borrowing an analogy from Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometime before the birth of Shri Krishna, it is said, the Lord entered into the heart of Shri Vasudeva, who then shone like the sun. Later, this light passed into Devaki through a mere look of Vasudeva when she shone like the moon. Even so, on the very first day of my darshan of Shri Bhagavan in the dining hall, I found in the look of the sage the dazzling brilliance of the sun. On a subsequent day, while I was sitting in the presence of Shri Maharishi in the hall, I recognized the same brilliance in the look of the sage, and it seemed to pierce to the core of my being. even as the light of the Lord passed into Devaki through the look of Vasudeva. My breath seemed to stop for a while, and my mind was elevated into some spiritual realm of unutterable peace and happiness. I know I have not conveyed much to the reader of my feeling by the above description of the experience I had in the presence of the great sage. This is due, as I have already said, to the uniqueness and inexpressible nature of all mystical experiences. Shri Maharishi is an extraordinary exception to the rule concerning the importance of the study of Vedanta, wherein it is accepted on all hands as a reliable guide, helping the aspirant to avoid a wrong pursuit of spiritual ideals. Unaided by an intellectual knowledge of even the essential concepts of Vedanta, and without anybody's advice or instruction, he was able to follow unswervingly the path he had chosen, because his guide was his own experience of the truth he had realized in his boyhood. In the case of Shri Maharishi, the incidental knowledge he later obtained of the Shastras was helpful in confirming his views on the nature of his own experience. While sitting in the hall, I observed Maharishi resting on the couch, wholly unconcerned with what was taking place in his presence. For instance, the constant flow of visitors who prostrated themselves before him and moved on one after the other. He seemed to be unconcerned of that. And yet, I could easily discern in him the attitude of oneness with all, abhinna bhava, through which he touched the inner being of the visitor, who was able to feel within himself the presence of the universal spirit transcending thought. I would venture to suggest that the reciprocal relationship between Sri Ramana Maharishi and in his Abhinna Bhava and the aspirant sitting in his presence is analogous to that of a radio transmitter and a receiver. If the visitor is really anxious to obtain the fullest benefit of the benign influence radiating from the silent presence of the sage, he, the visitor, must attune his mind to the proper wavelength. The use of this analogy should not mislead the reader into thinking that this is an implicit recognition of duality in the ultimate truth. For an understanding of the sage's point of view with reference to himself in relation to other, I may quote his teachings, which are perfectly clear and beyond all doubt. On page 29 of Sadharshana Bhashya and Talks with Maharishi, it is stated, when the yogi rises to the highest state of samadhi, it is the self in the heart that supports him, whether he is aware of it or not. If he is aware in the heart, he knows that in whatever state he is, it is always the same truth, the same heart, the one self, the spirit that is present throughout, eternal and immutable. It is from this state alone in which the sage ever abides that he exercises his benign influence over the numerous aspirants seeking his presence. Therefore, in the state of absolute being, which is one and eternal, there is not the least scope for duality. The words of the sage, given in another context, also confirm the above statement. When a visitor asked Sri Ramana Maharishi as to why he did not go about preaching the truth he had realized, he replied, "Real preaching is possible only through silence. The duality which is necessarily involved in verbal preaching is entirely eliminated in this silence. Moreover, truth to be truth must be universal and all-inclusive. That state in which the truth is realized cannot be veiled, much less obstructed by the mind and its three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. The state which at once transcends and includes the three states of the mind is known as the Sahajasthiti. In other words, the silence of the sage is constant and exercises uninterruptedly its benign influence whether the sage appears outwardly to be aware of the world or not. Reverting to the analogy of the transmitter, the sage's spiritual influence is transmitted unceasingly as far as he is concerned. But from the point of view of the seeker, the continued beneficent influence exercised by the sage will have no apparent effect unless he, the seeker, is himself prepared to receive the same. This preparation consists in his sadhana of practice of discrimination and detachment, that is viveka and vairagya. I continue to read a little bit from Ganeshananna's account. Swami Madhav Tirtha had earlier sent his book called Maya to Bhagavan. In it, he had logically presented how Adi Shankara's concept of Maya was fully vindicated by modern science's theory of relativity. When asked for Bhagavan's views on the book, Bhagavan was gracious enough to point out a mistake in the Swamiji's treatment of the subject and how he had based his arguments on a wrong presumption. The theory of relativity maintains that time and space are purely relative notions, dependent entirely on the conditions governing the observer and the object under observation, and that it proves this by demonstrating how two observers in different points of space perceived the same thing, same event differently. Maharishi pointed out to him, to Madhav Tirtha, to Swamiji, that the very presumption of two observers being situated at two given points is in itself unwarranted assumption and not true. Bhagavan says two observers put in two different situations is itself a theoretical notion. In other words, the space between one observer and another being relative and unreal, there cannot be more than one observer. Swami Madhav Tirtha at once recognized the error. It was a revelation to him that the Maharishi could judge offhand, as it were, such modern theories based entirely on his own experience of the supreme Advaitic truth. Swami Madhav Tirtha put all his questions based on his study of Vedanta. If the world is nothing but divine, why does Ishavasya Upanishad direct the renouncer, direct the seeker to renounce the world? Bhagavan's answers were naturally based on his own experience. One is commanded to renounce only the wrong knowledge that the world exists as an objective thing other than, apart from the divine. One must give up the wrong notion that there is duality and multiplicity and whatever manifested existence that may appear to be true. Swami Madhava Tirtha persisted. If the notion of duality is to be given up, no duality, no multiplicity, what place is there for the scriptural injunction to surrender to the divine? Bhagavan answered, the custom prevalent among some people in South India is to offer puja to the idol of Lord Ganesha before their daily meal. Once, a poor traveler was carrying jaggery and flour as food to have on the way. He had to do puja to Lord Ganesha before he could eat. He took out a portion of the jaggery and molded it into a lump, identifying it with the Lord. Now, he had to offer food to that Lord. Not finding any jaggery left, he took a pinch from the same jaggery Ganesha and then offered it to him. By doing so, he defiled the image. Your idea of self-surrender is nothing better than the offering made by the wayfarer. By presuming your existence apart from the Supreme Being, you have merely defiled it. Whether you have surrendered yourself or not, you have never been apart from that Supreme Being. Indeed, at this present moment, at this very moment, even as in past or in future, the divine alone exists. The divine alone is. The story of Jaggery Ganesha took place at the end of the 14th day of the Swamiji's stay. Before taking leave of Bhagavan, Swami Madhava Tirtha put before Bhagavan a lot of fruits. Bhagavan smiled at him benignly and said, So, you are offering jaggery to Lord Ganesha? Swami Madhav Tirtha later revealed that these words of blessing from Bhagavan instantly transformed him. I would like to quote some of the important spiritual instructions that Swami Madhav Tirtha elicited from Bhagavan during his short stay. This is by Ganesh Nana. Do not reply to the questions of the mind like, should I say I am Siva? Or I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, etc. while pursuing self-inquiry. Pursue the inquiry, who am I, relentlessly, and the heart will reveal the answer by itself. The state of the silent I behind the speaking I is the greatest mantra. The state of the silent I behind the speaking I is the greatest mantra. This I in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It says that the first name of God is I. Om, the primal sound and vibration, came into existence only later. There is no japa at all without the doer of the japa. All do the japa of I only. How many times we say I in our lives? Be as you are. Reality, pure awareness right now is the real japa. Japa and God are one and the same. You are perfect. Abandon the idea of imperfection. There is nothing to be destroyed. Ego is not a real thing, just as it is not necessary to kill the snake which one imagines to be a rope, which one imagines on a rope. There is no need to destroy the mind. Knowing the form of the mind benumbs the mind and makes it disappear. One cannot destroy what is eternally destroyed. Stability in the self is the real posture. Be steady in that real posture. I'll go to the last part. In 1956, Swami Madhav Tirtha came to Ramanashramam with 60 devotees. He was already renowned as a saint. He stayed for a few weeks in the ashram, while his devotees stayed outside in the ashram guest house. At that time, I was managing the ashram, Ganeshna. I was managing the ashram as my father was away on a long journey. Senior devotees like T.K. Sundaresh Iyer were guiding me. These old devotees advised me. Swami Madhav Tirtha had his self-realization in the presence of Bhagavan. Spend some time with him. On the day Swami Madhav Tirtha was to live along with his devotees, the duty of seeing them off fell on me. I arranged 20 horse carts for them to reach the railway station. The horse cart for Swami Madhav Tirtha was waiting at the entrance of the ashram. When I entered his room, the Swami was in an ecstatic state with tears flowing from his eyes. His devotees handed over to him his sandals and an umbrella as it was raining heavily. I told him, Swami, it is time for you to go to the train station. All the horse carts have come. Your devotees are waiting. Please come. He followed me, but he refused to wear his sandals and also rejected the umbrella. Instead, he walked in the pouring rain, unmindful that he was getting drenched. He reached Bhagavan's shrine, which was a thatched shed at that time. For the first time in my life, I saw the thrilling sight of a radiant 6-foot elderly sannyasin falling like a cut tree at the entrance to Bhagavan's shrine and crying like a baby. He uttered the following prayer to Bhagavan. I am like a suckling baby, Bhagavan. I cannot leave you. Yet I have to go. He had to literally pull himself up. We had to literally pull him up and supportively drag him to the cart. He refused to get into the horse cart inside the premises of the ashram. We had to walk him outside to where all his devotees and other horse carts were waiting. All through, Swami Madhav Tirtha was crying in ecstasy, submerged as he was in the state of surrendered devotion to the Master. The devotees were about to help him into the cart. A pious and mature old devotee, D.M.S. Naidu, who was fully aware of the greatness of the Swamiji, advised me, he is a saint. Place your head on its holy feet. I obeyed. Swami Madhav Tirtha put both his hands on my head and blessed me. I went into ecstasy. That was my very first spiritual experience. The experience of going beyond the limitations of one's body and mind. I felt blessed. It was BMS Naidu who helped me commence my true spiritual journey, though at that time I was not aware of its true significance. It is all Bhagavan's grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We continue with self-inquiry session.
Namo Ramana to all. For the reading of Bhagavan's Upadesham as a commencement of the self-inquiry session, I have chosen talk 486. It's a talk on self-inquiry, small one. So we'll read that. 2nd May 1938, talk 486. Mr. Ganapat Ram, how shall I find out who am I? Bhagavan, are there two selves? For one self to find another devotee. The self must be only one, consisting of two aspects of I, that is the I and the Sankalpa, that is the thinker and the thought. After a time he continued, please say how I shall realize the I. Am I to make the japa? Who am I? Bhagavan, no japa of the kind is meant. Devotee, am I to think who am I? Bhagavan, you have known that the I thought springs forth. Hold the I thought, find its moola, source. You have known that the I thought springs forth. Hold the I thought and find its moola, the source. Devotee, may I know the way? Bhagavan, do as you have now been told and see. Devotee, I do not understand what I should do. Bhagavan, if it is anything objective, the way can be shown objectively. This is subjective. But I do not understand. What? Do you not understand that you are? Devotee, please tell me the way. Bhagavan, is it necessary to show the way in the interior of your own home? This is within you. This is a key upadesham from Bhagavan, that this ability to know oneself, the ability to perceive who am I, is naturally present in the self. It is like Aham Brahmasmi, the upadesham given by the great ones. The ability to know the self, the ability to know who am I, is contained in that. The more it is instructed from outside, the more the teacher is making it objective. The practitioner should be trusted, should be allowed to find the way to the self. That is the natural way to the self. That is what Bhagavan is teaching us here. Don't make who am I as a force from outside. Let it be a practice. Because in everyone, in every jiva, in every bit of consciousness, this ability to know oneself is present. This Paramatman is present. That is the Upadesham Bhagavan is giving. And his own self-abidance gives him that ability, that adhikara to give the Upadesham. The Paramatman is inside you. Just make the attempt. You will be able to do it yourself. Any guidance from outside makes it objective. So start doing it, is what Bhagavan is saying. How he puts it is very beautiful. He says, is it necessary to show the way in the interior of your own home? This is within you, devotee. What do you advise me to do? Bhagavan, why should you do anything? What should you do? Only keep quiet. Why not keep quiet? Each one must do according to his own state. Devotee, please tell me what is suitable to do. I want to hear from you. Munagal Venkatramayanji writes, no answer. For Bhagavan, silence is there. That means in self-inquiry, when we are in Satsangha, there comes a point when all reading, all instructions stop, and we rely on the ability to go inward in each one of us and start practicing. So for 10 minutes, with Bhagavan's immense grace, let us all sit in Atma Vicharam. Revatima, you can set the timer for us.
Yes, Uncle, I'll do.
Okay. We'll sit for 10 minutes in Atma Vicharam. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We now have a sharing by Shri Venkatesh Deshpande ji.
Vasudeva Satam Devam Kansachanurmardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. We're doing Manana on Bhagavad Gita Saram. In the last week, we did Manana on the verse 10 that Bhagavan had chosen, where he says that the all-pervading space does not get contaminated by the qualities of the objects that are there in the space. So the self which pervades the entire body never really gets affected. That's what Krishna says. And we come to the next verse 11. Want Sapna to please recite them.
Yes, sir. अथ श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासारः न तद्भास्यते सूर्यः न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम न तद्भासयते सूर्यः न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम.
Thank you, Sapna. The literal translation of this is, neither the sun, nor the moon, nor the fire can shine or illuminate that final state, which is self-effulgent. The second part, that state is my supreme abode, wherefrom the people who once reach it do not return to the earth again. So there are two parts to this there are two parts to this verse. So the first part is, neither the sun, moon, nor the fire can shine or illuminate that final state. So the supreme light that all of us are seeking is actually devoid of any darkness. So whenever we want to see any object, we require the sunlight or moonlight or electricity. Why is that? Because we need physical illumination. But if a torch light enables us to see the objects in darkness, there is no need for a second torch light to see the first one, which reveals itself also. So Atman is self-effulgent. So this is a very important aspect that we need to understand, is what are we seeking? Typically what we do is we see when we say light, what comes immediately to our mind is sunlight or moonlight or electricity or any of this which are more physical illumination. But what Krishna and Bhagavan are trying to tell us is that we need to get to the state of self-realization where you will experience the light within. Now, if you look at our body itself, we find that the body, the intellect, the mind, the senses are all actually illuminated by this self-effulgent light from within. But we have not actually made an attempt to go and look at this light. We have always been actually looking at this light outside. So like the example of the torchlight actually will show you the objects outside, but you don't need another torchlight to see the first one, which reveals itself also. So similarly, you don't need another light to be able to see the Atman. You really need to go within. So that's the first part of the verse. The second part is, that state is my supreme abode, wherefrom the people who once reach do not return to the earth again. Now, if you look at our own lives, I'm giving some very simple examples, but we can learn all from simple examples. Like, for example, when we grow up, when we are children, and we grow up and we become teenagers and we become adults. Now, can we go back to being teenagers? Can we go back to being babies? Unless we take another birth, yes, it'll be possible. But in this lifetime, is it possible to go back? You cannot go back. Or another example is, if you're a doctor. Once you become a doctor, everybody will call you a doctor. You can't say that, oh, from tomorrow everybody call me an engineer. Once you become a doctor, you become a doctor. So what Sri Krishna is trying to say here is that once you are merged into me, you actually lose your identity. Identity with what? With the body. So he confirms that those who reach the cosmic consciousness have not escaped from the clutches of ignorance. So this is one very important aspect that we need to understand, is when you are with the light, as long as you think that there is movement, there is birth. So what is birth? Actually, birth is birth of the ego. Like we heard what Nandkumar read out, what really happens is the individual consciousness merges with the superconsciousness. But why does it happen? There is no going, there is no coming, there is no birth. The birth is only of the ego. And ego is what? Ego is false. So there are two questions that actually typically come up with this verse. The first question that comes up, that is the path to God and the state of yearning for union with Brahman, are they greater than the union itself? So many of us actually go through this question in our sadhana. Is the process equally important as the destination? Bhagavan has to say that once we reach the final destination of self-realization, there will no longer be any of these movements. We cannot compare the stage of final sadhana. We cannot compare the stage of sadhana with the final goal. The supreme goal, when reached, is beyond all descriptions. So that's what Nandkumar also was talking about in his reading, that it is beyond all description. When you have description, means what? There is a person who is saying something, there is some speech that is going on, there is a mind that's involved, and he's speaking to someone. So there are so many different aspects, but when you are in the bliss, there is only silence. a bare idea of the profound happiness of that state is uncomparable. The second question that comes up, this is also another question that most of us go through. If I do sadhana with a limited purpose, and if it does not fructify, I will be at a loss. What is to be done? So the question is that we are doing sadhana, and you have all these ichhas, these vasanas, and then you actually go to Bhagavan. So Bhagavan says, the one who does sadhana for a limited selfish purpose and stops it through frustrations will not lose. So this is a beautiful thing that, as part of the spiritual journey, is that if you whatever good you do, it's like an RBI account. It's not like a savings bank account. It's like an RBI account. When you put into the RBI account, it stays, it just grows. So that's what Sri Krishna is also saying. Whatever sadhana is done will remain credited to one's account. Such a person who approaches God motivated by materialistic desires too is deemed as a bhakta. So you may have any amount of materialistic desires, but you are devoted to God. He is also and is equally dear to the Lord. So the important aspect is, if you're giving your heart to the Lord and you have your desires will be met and God will be dear to you. The one who seeks boons from the Lord loves his gifts, no doubt, but in due course he begins to love the God, the gift giver, even if the receiving of gift is stopped later. This is another very, very important aspect, and this is something I've learned through life, is what are you looking for? Are you looking for the gifts that God gives, or are you looking for the person who gives the gifts, which is the Lord, which is God? So this is an important thing, because it's good to get the gifts, but after some time you need to be able to be with the person who actually gives the gifts. So the grace is continuously there. The grace of God is continuously there. It really depends on whether your cup is upside down or facing upwards. So it's in this whole process that we see in this verse, is there are two aspects. Is the final state is self-effulgence. So you have to be with the light within, and that is the supreme abode of Sri Krishna himself. So when you are with Sri Krishna, so for example, whatever you do, for example, if you are doing karma, if you are doing it to satisfy your own ichhas, then what happens is you're doing certain level of karma. But if you do karma yoga, which is actually satisfying the will and wish of Sri Krishna, then you are doing a higher level of work, a higher level of karma. So it's called karma yoga. So the important thing is not to satisfy your needs or your ichhas, but actually satisfying the ichhas of Sri Krishna. So when you start actually doing anything in life because you are satisfying the Lord, then what happens is suddenly you are in line with, you will start believing and seeing the Lord within you, and then you'll start feeling the light within. And once you start believing the light within, then you will not, the lights outside will be there, but the light from within will illuminate everything. Once the light from within illuminates everything, then you are in total peace. You are in samatva. Nothing bothers you, because you realize that actually everything is, well, like what Nand Kumar said, everything is consciousness. Ishavasam idam sarvam. Everything is pervaded. Like in the previous verse, Bhagavan says, I pervade everything. But the problem is, God pervades everything, but what happens is, because of our outwardness, we see the objects that are there in the all pervasiveness. We are stuck with the objects, the names and forms that we see in the consciousness, and we are unable to see the consciousness that pervades everything. So the more you go inwards and you feel the peace within, you will actually start believing in the all pervasiveness of God within you itself. And once you start believing it and experience that light and all pervasiveness within, you will actually start seeing the all pervasiveness all around. And the objects are there, they are there, but they will not have any more of the importance that it is to have happen earlier. So may Shri Krishna give us all the strength and to be in his state where we are with him, the light which is within. Jai Shri Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana, Doctor.
We continue with the sharing by Dr. Kalarani Rangaswamy.
Akka, you have to unmute yourself.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Arunachalamena agame ninaipavar agathai veraruppai Arunachala. Namo Ramana to all. We are meditating on the meaning of Dhyana Pattu given by Sadhana Swamigal. And in the last satsang, we saw Parka Parka Unnulle Paramajnanam Pukume. Thoughts are actually desires. When we see an object, say for example, first I think, oh, how nice is it? Next, it belongs to whom? The question arises. Oh, it belongs to the person, that person. The next thought, does he need it? I don't think he is in need for it. Then why should that object be with him? Can't it be with me? Then the thought becomes stronger. And I think, yes, it should be with me. Then I step into the action and ask him to give that object to me. But he gives some lame excuses and do not want to part with the object. First it makes me sad, then I get angry, and when I completely come to know that I am not going to get that object, I start showing hatred towards that object. On the other hand, if he is ready to give the object to me, I feel very happy. But still, for how long I will be happy with the object? After some time, it's going to occupy the corner of our room. See what all magic a single thought is playing. Instead, Sadhana Swami says, instead of trying to satisfy the desire, look into the thought and see for whom the thought or the desire arises and question it. The answer will be, the thought is for me. Then who am I? Am I this body? In that case, does the body say, yes, I am? Does it ever say? In Ulladu Naarpadu, Bhagavan clearly mentions, Sada Udal Nan Ennadu, Satchittu Udiyadu. The body, which is matter, says not I. Eternal awareness neither appears nor disappears. Between the two bound by the body arises the thought I. Sadhguru says,
When you are not the body, why do you relate everything that is happening to your body? Give attention to the thought and inquire for whom is the thought arises. When we are in this practice, giving attention to each and every thought and realize nothing is going to affect us, we will always be in the state of Ananda. I'll tell you an example given by Sadhu himself. A thought arises and the thought is, I want to eat laddu. That too, it must be prepared by me and should be like a Tirupati laddu. The secret is that I don't know how to make laddus. Now the problem starts now. I have to search for the ingredients that are needed for preparing laddus. After accumulating everything, I started making laddus with great difficulty. At least it come off well. Till then, I was so tensed about by making laddu. Oh, it should come nicely. I was very tense. Somewhere or the other, it came off really good. I tasted it and felt very happy. At this juncture, Sadhu asked, why did you feel happy? Was it because it was very sweet and you like sweets? No. If the same laddu is served next day after Deepavali, you will not like it. Was the happiness because of the ingredients, that is lot of ghee and cashew nuts, cardamom, etc.? No, not at all. I was happy because my thought is fulfilled and it got subsided, and at least for some time more, I won't be having that thought. So Sadhu says, rising of thought brings us sorrow and subsiding of thought gives us Ananda. Bhagavan says, instead of going through this long process and fulfilling the thought and then getting Ananda, that too for only for a limited time, why don't you directly see for whom this thought arises? When you are go on inquiring, this a state will come where there is only Ananda and nothing else. Because there is nothing other than the self at all. And self is always in the state of Ananda. Parka parka unnulle paramajnanam pookume. So what should I do to be in that state of Ananda? Sadhu says in the next stanza, Parkum arivai parkave pazhigi pazhigi vettrikol. See, we learn many things in the world. That too, just by downloading WhatsApp, Facebook and whatnot. And others, we think that we know everything. And we hear people saying, the whole world is in my fingertip, and feel so proud of it. Sadhu says, see the source from where you could know the world. Say for example, the sun shines on the objects that we see. What we do, we concentrate on the objects and literally forget about the light that is falling on the object and its source. In the same way, there is source knowledge by which we see all the objects in the world, but actually what happens, we just experience the object and the happenings in the world and fail to know about the source of that knowledge. Like we enjoy the air coming out of the fan, we experience the air conditioning, modern kitchen instruments are also used, but we never keep on thinking about the source energy for these to run. Likewise, we miss the awareness of source knowledge, which makes us see everything and experience it. Sadhu Swami says, Parkum arivai parkave, pazhigi pazhigi vettrikol. It's not enough that we know that, oh, this is the source. I knew it. We must practice it again and again. Pazhagi pazhagi vetrigol. Because whatever we are seeing outside, but the source which we make is see things and experience is inside and within us. Just by getting involved in seeing outside, we will miss to experience its source. So keep on practicing it. Whenever we see something outside, as immediately search for its source. Search from where this knowledge is coming from. And by doing so, we will surely succeed. That's what Sadhvam says. Parkum arivai parkave, pazhagi pazhagi vetrikol. Keep on practicing. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
We have the next sharing by Ujjwal Jagadish.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the Ramana Chatvarimshat written by Ganapati Muni. Ramanena sanathamidham bhuvanam. Ramanena sanathamidham bhuvanam. Chaturena chalendriya nigrahane. Patuna parakiya gunagrahane. Chalavarjita mauna samadhi jusha. Balavarjita bhikara kamarusha. Chaturani chalanendriya nigrahisalu. Nipunani pararasu guna grahisalu. Chalavillada mauna samadhi sthita nina bhala bedari pudu bhikara kamadigala. Ganapati Muni started this verse saying that, "O Ramana, you are very, very adept in controlling this always moving senses. And you are the one who is well versed in seeing the suguna, the good qualities in everyone. And you are ever abiding in the mauna samadhi, ever abiding state of silence, which is beyond all pretense, which is beyond all chala. And your power is such that you destroy all the qualities, the what we say as negative qualities, starting with kama and krodha, kamadigala. You destroy all the negative qualities that one rises within." And Shardaka says that every thought is actually a desire. And Ramana says that these desires, Ganapati Muni says, Ramana has the power to destroy these thoughts, which is the source of every desire. Ramana himself talks of a story which brings out the glory of the presence of Sadguru. There was a great saint poet called Tattvaraya of 12th century from Tamil Nadu, and he had written a set of verses on his guru Swarupananda in a special meter called Bharani. And he presented his work in the presence of the king and the great ministers and scholars, and wanted them to evaluate it. And once he finished presenting the verses which was written in this meter called Bharani, the scholars objected this, saying that this Bharani meter should be written only on a great soldier or a great Veera who has the power to kill, who has the power to control 1,000 elephants. And this cannot be written on an ascetic like your guru. Okay, this is not at all acceptable, they tell Tattvaraya. And Tattvaraya say, why don't you all come to the presence of my guru? Then you will understand the power of my guru. So saying, he leads the group with the king and the ministers and the scholars. Hundreds of people go to the forest and reach the hermitage of Swarupananda. And once they reach paying their obeisance, he explains the purpose of their coming. And then Swarupananda sits in silence. And all the devotees who are in the presence also sit in silence. And in that silence, the day passes and the night comes, and night also passes. In this way, many days, many nights have passed. And after many days, the Swarupananda, he moves his mind. And this awakens everyone. And they are all surprised. What has happened? We have spent so many days and night without even a thought that why are we here, what are we doing here. Even that thought was not there. And the scholars salute to Swarupananda and says, yes, Tattvaraya, the power of the Guru's presence is that it can control what is the power of 1,000 elephants. Your Guru has been able to control the rutting elephant of this mind ego. He's able to control it, and without letting even one thought to arise. What is the greatness of your Guru? And this Bharani meter is very befitting to your teacher, and they salute him and go back to their places. This is the power of the Guru's silence, Mauna Samadhi Jisha. So in the presence of Ramana, who was ever abiding in silence, whoever came with a desire, even with a desire that they wanted to have the experience of the self, by his sight, Ramana could bless them with that experience of eternal silence. Even when some devotees in the kitchen wanted to serve more to Bhagavan, wanted to serve more by giving him more special attention and more serving of food, Ramana's one sight would destroy all their desire of seeing Ramana as special. And in the dance ballet of which we presented, Arunachal Ramana Jnana Kandam, where Ramana, as a young boy of 16, he faces the death, and the death which is embodied as a character, the Marana says, oh, I see the Jnana Drishti of Shiva, the Jnana Drishti of Shiva, which destroys everything. Anaitum Basmamakum Kan. And that Anaitum Basmamakum Kan, the Drishti which destroys everything, is destroying me. Maranatukke Maranam, the death of the death. So saying this, the Marana disappears. Ramana's this sight is available to all the sadhakas of Ramana way as the great astra, the powerful astra of Nanyar, the Brahmastiram of who am I. And whenever the thought arises, which is the form of a desire, that is killed by this, that is chopped away and destroyed at its source through this Brahmastiram called who am I. And with constant use of this Brahmastiram, Ramana says, you will ever abide in the Mauna Samadhi which Ramana is ever abiding in. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, who shines as the self in all beings. Throughout this evening, we have been meditating on the power of self-abidance in different forms. This thought was the thread of this satsang. It so happened by Bhagavan's grace, be it the fact that we found in Pratibha's song, Idaya Kuhaye Iripidamaha Udaya Kadirpol Ulahelam Olirum, rising from the heart. It is like just as sunlight envelops the world, Ramana envelops everything, spreading from the heart. We had Radha singing to us about the path of self-enquiry being the very easy path, Ramanudu Chupina Margamu Saralamu Anusaraniyamu. And then We went out to the reading by Nandakumarji of Swami Mother Tirtha, where he talks about Bhagavan as the sun. And then we had Venkateshji's sharing after the inquiry session itself, where again he spoke of the light and the importance of understanding this light of awareness, not as the physical light, but the light of knowledge, the light of awareness. We had Dr. Kalarani telling us how this practice of ours, Palahi Palahi Vetrikol, we have to practice it and keep on practicing it, as Bhagavan says in Apalapattu, Santatam Salipara Santoshamagave Palahi Palahi Vetrikol. Dr. Kalarani also referred to the verse from Ulladu Narpadu, where Bhagavan says, Jada Udal Nan Ennadu. So the body is not saying I, the self is not rising. So who is it who is saying I? Who is saying? That is what Bhagavan asks us to find out in the inquiry, who am I? And then we had Ujjwal telling us that the glance of Bhagavan is the Shakti, the question, who am I? Sri Muruga's javelin is called Shakti. The veil is called Shakti. By some, very many people call it Shakti. The veil itself is called Shakti. It is the power. It is given to him by Shakti, the mother goddess. And it is the power that he wields. We have been meditating on Bhagavan's Ashtotram, the name Mahasena Mahumshena Jataya Namaha. While meditating on that, we have been going into the story of the Kumara Sambhava and the killing of the demon Surapadna, because all these stories are actually meant to reveal to us the truths in our spiritual journey. The personification of every aspect of God is in order to reveal to us certain mystical revelations in a very simple, embodied manner. So we had Kumara Skanda, who came, the Mahasena, came leading the celestial armies, or the armies of Ganas came with him. And the armies of Ganas, meaning all the devotees of Shiva, are the Ganas. Who are they? They are all devotees of Shiva, they are following him. So it is like the concentrated force of devotion is headed by, so all the devotion has got concentrated into the Eka Chintana of the power of self-enquiry, which is what Subramanya is carrying as his veil. And through that enquiry, the Krauncha hill, which is the past, which is all the memories, all the clinging to the past has been destroyed. The sense of doership, which came as Taraka, I can do, I can cross, I can reach. That sense of doership in Tarakasura was also destroyed, which came armed with many, many weapons. So many things, so many ways in which we feel we can succeed. We have to succeed. Muruganar Swami says, Yattanayo Sarva. So many supports are there. For all the people, they have many supports. Every action we think is a support. Every thought we think is a support to take us somewhere, to give us some happiness. We believe it will take us across our difficulty which we are facing and will give us a solution. So that is Taraka. But that Taraka has to be destroyed, because that Taraka is a demon, is an Asura. How is he an Asura? He is combined with the sense of I can do. The limited becomes combined with power. It will always become demonic, because when we are limited, we can never have love. there will always be selfishness. There is always division. When there is division, there is some form of selfishness or the other. So that Taraka is destroyed, and then the sense, a subtler form of doership which comes with I know. I know this is happening. I know this is how it is. That too has to surrender to its source. It has to surrender. Because where from does the knowledge arise? Today in the Bhagavad Gita we heard, where from? What is the source of this knowledge? The thought, there is power in us, there is a separate power in us which knows, is the illusion. That there is any separate power in us to do or to know, that is the illusion. So that is also brought to the point of surrender. That's when we see in the story of Arunachala, the Adi Mudi Kana Jyoti, when the great gods surrender to that light, we cannot know your beginning or your end. This happens in the inquiry when the mind recognizes, I cannot know the self. I cannot know the self. I cannot reach the self. I cannot comprehend the self. So what is the way when I cannot? Surrendering within to the silence is the way. That is the surrender of Simhamukha. That is the surrender of that power of knowledge, that power of being able to actually achieve things through knowledge only. If we do not know, where can we act? So it is because we know that we believe we can act, and we believe that we know about the action, we believe we know the results of the action, we believe we know the route which the thought and the action will take. It's all based on that knowing, that sense of knowing. In another song, Muruganar Swami says, Yan param yendre serikadu. He says the self does not even declare that I am supreme. It does not say I am supreme, because there is no duality. There is nobody to declare to anything. Yennulle venkatavan taan kadavulaga தலைப்பட்டு ஒளிர்வதனால். So without saying it is supreme, it is. But when we recognize that there is something else which rises and says, I am supreme, I know. And then we reach a point through inquiry when we recognize, I do not know. I seem to know my thoughts. But do I know who I am? Do I know who is the thinker of these thoughts? I seem to know the objects, but do I know the subject? So when I recognize, when I try to seek, I must come to a point of silence, which is how the Simhamukha is destroyed. But at the end of it all, if there is even a vestige of identity that is left, a vestige of identity that remains, which says, I have surrendered, which says, I am experiencing the truth, or which remains in any other subtle, unknown form as the very cause, as the very basis of the bodily identification. If any vestige, if the smallest bit of identification with the body remains, that has to be completely annihilated. And Surapadna is the embodiment of a need to be embodied, of a need to have an entity, to be an entity. That entity can be anything, anybody. It can be even something large. I could be the wind, I could be the sky, I could be the earth, I could be the universe. But if I am something embodied, if I want to be something embodied, then what of it? What of it? Unless there is abidance in the self, it is of no use. So that sense of being embodied, which is Surapadma, and which is actually hidden behind all this, behind the sense of acting, behind the sense of knowing, and finally, even behind the sense of not knowing, because I know that I do not know, I know that I have ignorance, or in the mere sense of enjoying the bliss, even in that sense, if there is a vestige, it has to be cut asunder. So this Surapadma actually appears in many, many, many forms. He takes many forms. That is how the ego is. Bhagavan says, Uruppatri undam, Uruppatri nirkum, Uruppatri und, miha ongum. Uruvittu Uruppatrum. This ego, Rupodbhavo Rupatati Pratishto Rupashano Dhuta Grihita Rupaha Swayam Virupaha, because it is not having any form of its own. It is constantly holding some other form, some other form, some other form. It is taking some form or the other. So if something in the story we meditated upon of Nakira seeing a leaf falling into the river and the leaf becoming a fish and the fish becoming a bird. Now, he thinks a leaf has fallen and the leaf has become a fish. We do not know whether the fish had become the leaf and then again became the fish and now became the bird. How do we know when something is constantly changing its forms? How can you grasp what it is? So Bhagavan says you have to cut away the forms. Cut away the attachment to thoughts. That's how you separate it. Separate it from its power. So Surapadma, taking many, many forms, finally takes the form of a huge tree. Why a tree? Because a tree has its roots and a tree has its branches and a tree has many, 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 many fruits. So that is how it is with, Bhagavan says, every thought is a seed. Is a seed means it can give rise to a tree. And a tree will have so many fruits with so many seeds, which means so many more trees. In a physical sense, it's very beautiful to have so many trees on the earth. But imagine all the thoughts within us, each one sprouting as a tree with thousands of fruits, with thousands of more trees. That is what is symbolized by Surapadma, that tree, which is the source of so many millions of trees, so many millions of seeds which are contained in it, that which has grown from a seed. What is that seed? That seed is a desire to be embodied. And Muruga, he cuts asunder the tree. He splits it into two. Okay. Now the splitting into two is what Bhagavan is asking us to do in self-inquiry. He says, separate the I from the thoughts. Split it. The I is always mixed up with the thought. I am angry, I am sad, I am happy, I am this thing, I am that thing. Split it. Split it into the object part, which is the happiness, the sorrow, the anger, and the I part. Separate it. By asking for whom is this thought, he splits it into two. He splits this tree into two. It becomes one thought, object, my thought, and I. The moment it is split into two, what happens? It recognizes it does not have any locus standi. It cannot exist. Only hidden behind this form, it can exist. Otherwise, it cannot exist. So, Surapadma, when Murugan splits this tree into two, he says, Paripalaya, protect me, protect me. He surrenders to Murugan. So that is what happens. The ego, when it is questioned, it falls back into its real source of strength, which is the self. Instead of being behind the pretended sources of strength, which are the thoughts. Instead of sprouting as millions of trees, it goes back, it dissolves, and then Surapadna offers himself as the peacock and the cock. The cock which is calling out the wake up call. The wake up call comes from the cock. And the peacock is a vehicle of Lord Subramanya. The peacock with its multiple colors, all submitted to Subramanya. The variety, the multiplicity of the world, all submitted, all which becomes a vehicle of the Lord. Everything which appears, the entire multiplicity is subservient to the Lord. The Lord is riding. So the life of the Jivan Mukta, the one who is surrendered, becomes a mere vehicle of the Lord. And the Jivan Mukta also calls out to the whole world, wake up, wake up. That is the only task which a Mukta does. Whether the Mukta speaks or does not speak, whether the Mukta acts or does not act, by the very presence, the Mukta continues to live in the body only to say, wake up, to tell us all to wake up. So that is what Muruga converts this limited entity into his vehicle, into his voice, into his wake up call. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. We now have the chanting of Aksharamanamale verses by Radha and Vallabha.
தருணாருணமணி கிரணாவலி நிகழ்த்தருமக்ஷரமண மகள் மாலை திருநாடிய திரு அடியா திருமருள் தெளிய பரவுதல் பொருளாக கருணாகர முனி ரமணாரி அனுபகையினால் சொல்லியது கத்தியாக அருணாச்சலமெனாகவே அறிவுடும் ஆழ்வார் சிவன் உலகாழ்வாரே. அருணாச்சல வரக்கேற்ற அக்ஷரமணமாலை சாற்ற கருணாகர கணபதியே கரமருளி காப்பாயே. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை பெறருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா அழகு சுந்தரம் போலாகவும் நீயும் முற்று அபிநமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா ஆகம்போகும் தீர்த்தும் அககுகை சிறையாய் அமர்வித்ததென் கொல் அருணாச்சலா ஆருக்காவென்னை ஆண்டனை அகற்றிடில் அகிலம் பழித்திடும் அருணாச்சலா இப்பழி தப்புனையே நினைப்பித்தாய் இனி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சலா ஈன்றிடும் மன்னையிர் பெரிதருள் புரிவோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா உனையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுள்ளத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா ஊர் சுற்றுளம் விடாதுன்னை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சலா என்னை அழித்திப்போதென்னை கலவாவிடில் இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சலா ஏன் இந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறர் இழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா ஐம்புல கள்வர் அகத்தினில் பூக்கும் போது அகத்தில் நீ இல்லையோ அருணாச்சலா ஒருவனாம் உன்னை ஒழித்தவர் வருவார் உன் சூதே இது அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி நமோ ரமண.
Namo Ramana. We conclude the satsang with the Ashtotra Puja to Bhagavan, which will be at the altar of Sri Subramanyam. It will be chanted by Vaibhavji and Prarthana and Uma and Ashwini.
नमो रमण. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योऽपि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः. ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः. ॐ गुरवे नमः. ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः. ॐ महौजसे नमः. ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः. ॐ जगद्दितावताराय नमः. ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः. ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः. ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः. ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः. ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः. ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः. ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः. ॐ श्रीमद्वादशान्तमहास्तरे लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः. ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः. ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः. ॐ तीव्राय नमः. ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः. ॐ इन्दुमौळिना पितृमते नमः. ॐ पितुरादेशतः षोडशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः. ॐ तपोमयाय नमः. ॐ उदासीनाय नमः. ॐ महायोगिने नमः. ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः. ॐ शाग्रदये नमः. ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः. ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः. ॐ सवित्रे नमः. ॐ स्थिराय नमः. ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः. ॐ वल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः. ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः. ॐ च्यूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः. ॐ चूडिकाखिलविक्रमाय नमः. ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः. ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः. ॐ त्रिगुणातीताय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजितचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निधाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः।
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचल ऋद्भूत स्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्द परिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावलिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ हृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणात् बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ षोडाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः त्रिन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संघिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋದಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।